What's up, college sports fans? I'm Stuckey.
I'm Colin Wilson.
I'm Mike Calabrese.
I'm Maria Marino.
I'm Charlie DiSturco, and we're excited that the Big Bets on Campus brand is launching its very own YouTube channel.
You'll be able to find every episode of the BBOC podcast, live shows, and other college sports content on this new channel.
Not only will the channel be dedicated to betting on college sports, but you'll also be able to find exclusive interviews with former college athletes,
college football power rankings,
and updates on other topics like the brand new College Football 25 video game series and the ins and outs of the recruiting trail all the way down to the transfer portal.
Whether you're into college football,
college basketball,
college baseball, or any of the college sports,
we are the home for college sports, and BBOC is the channel for you.
Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of the action. I'll see you there.
Welcome to the Action Network podcast presented by BetMGM. I'm Chris Raybon of the Action Network, and this is your NFC betting preview part 1. We're going to talk win totals, futures, all things NFC East and NFC South. We'll go team by team, and then we'll have part 2 with the NFC North and the NFC West. Earlier this week, we covered the AFC, 2 parts. So be sure to check out those 2 episodes if you haven't already. And here to break it down with me, the outlook of every team in the NFC East and the NFC South, the Prime Minister of Degenerate Nation, the Rambler, Stuckey. Stuck, what's good?
Yo, what's going on? We're fully back in the grind. 4 divisions covered yesterday in 2 episodes, and 4 more today. And excited to ramble some more NFL. Can't wait for the season to get here. So yeah, some NFC today. Pretty fascinating conferences across the board, and I think there's a lot we have to get to. So let's not waste any more time and dive right in.
All right, let's start with the NFC East. You have the Philadelphia Eagles leading the way with a win total of 10.5 at BetMGM, juice to the over at -140. The Eagles are -120 to win the NFC East. And remember, it's been 2 decades? What's the exact amount of time since there was a repeat winner?
Since 2003.
So that's 21 years. It's been 21 years, or 20 years, I guess you could say. No, 21 years.
21.
So, yep. So Dallas, of course, won it last year. So I think Philly does make sense. The offensive line is going to be interesting. I still think it'll be good, but obviously you lose Kelsey in the middle, so that's big. And I think for me, Stuck, when I look at this Eagle team, there was a lot wrong with the defense last year. So now you bring in a new coordinator in Vic Fangio, you bring in some new pieces in the secondary, you draft some guys at cornerback. So I guess my question to you, 2 parts really. Number 1, how's the defense going to look? This new look defense, is it going to be effective? And number 2, can Jalen Hurts handle the blitz? Is Kellen Moore, the new offensive coordinator, is he going to have answers for Jalen Hurts to deal with the blitz? Because I think that's what really kind of ruined Philadelphia's season offensively last year.
Yeah, we can start with the defense. Bring in, the Eagles are getting a lot of love in the market. I think it's gone a little too far. They definitely upgraded at both coordinator positions. This is a team that was a mess last year, despite winning 11 games. I mean, they got out to that 10-1 start. Very fraudulent and very lucky. They went 8-3 in 1-possession games, and then it's just all collapsed down the stretch. Their coordinator, Brian Johnson was awful. They were so predictable, which is why the blitz gave Hurts so many problems, because teams knew when to really blitz, and their play calling got so predictable. So you bring in Kellen Moore, you're going to see a much more modern, way less predictable offense, more motion, more tempo in the offense this year. Yeah, I am curious to see how the offensive line plays out. Obviously, losing Kelsey is a big loss. You're going to have Juergens slide in at center, Steen at right guard. But the offense, I think, will be better. They're going from 2, I'm not Sean Desai. He's supposed to run the Fangio, install the Fangio scheme, but he really didn't. I don't know what he was doing. And then obviously they went to Matt Patricia. But anyway, back to the defense. You're going from simpler schemes to much more complex, which I think is a good thing, but it might not work right away. Fangio, notoriously, schemes don't usually hit and peak until year 2. I mean, look what happened in Miami last year. Obviously didn't go well. What you need in the Fangio system, gap and a half, match quarters, split zone in the back, cover 2 shell, cover 3 quarters coverage is, or I should say 2 high safety shell, cover 3 quarters, mixed coverages on the back end. You need good communication. So you need good safeties. I don't know if Philly necessarily has that. You need guys who can win one-on-one up front. I think they do have that.
Mm-hmm.
But this is all going to come down to, it's a complex defense. Looks simple. That's why it's been all the rage, is that it really confuses quarterbacks. It looks like there's a 2 high shell. In the past, quarterbacks would look at the weak side safety to kind of tell what coverage a defense was in. Well, if there's a 2 high shell, you don't really know. And then you can morph into cover 3 quarters, you could do split field coverages, and that's why it's been so effective. But you need to have really good communication to make that work. And so it's new, and you have a lot of young pieces in this secondary. So how's the communication all going to work? Not in love with the linebackers either. But I really am so curious to see how the secondary shakes out. You have a lot of bodies there. I mean, I think they did the right thing. They drafted really well. It's a smart organization. They knew they had to address the secondary. James Bradbury's washed. They're moving him to safety. I think that, Slay is on the downturn, but it's not going to be asked to play as much man. But so then you go and you draft 2 guys who I think are, Quinyon Mitchell, I was a huge fan of at Toledo. You bring in Cooper DeJean also. And then, you bring in another, a guy in Isaiah Rodgers, who I think was just a good buy low guy. But how are all these pieces going to fit together? Because you've seen Quinyon Mitchell in the slot, but Fangio says he wants him on the outside. Is Ringo going to start number 2? You have all these guys that could play slot, like Maddox. Is he going to play slot? Are they going to put him at safety? Is DeJean, did you put him at safety? So, and they've been moving a lot of these guys around. DeJean's been hurt, but I'm so curious to see how it shakes out, because this is a really complex defense, and get the guys that you want in their right places and then start figuring this out, get the communication right. So that's what I'm going to be watching, especially early on in the season, how the communication works. But it's definitely going to be a much better, well-schooled, well-coached defense. Can they catch on? Might take some time. And the offense is just going to be better, just because it's going to be more well-schooled, less predictable, more modern principles, as long as the interior of that offensive line works out. And it'd be nice if they can find, that third receiver to really help. But I think that the Eagles have gotten just a little bit too much love now. Didn't disagree with some of the moves early, but I'm not as super high on this team as others. What are your thoughts?
I do think they're the best team in this division right now. And that's also because, and we'll get to Dallas. I think last year was the time to bet on Dallas. This year, I think, I just don't think that Dallas is going to improve. I think they're going to regress. But with Philly, you mentioned the defense, and that's really, what I think is going to be key, because the talent is there, but how long does it take? Because you start the season with Green Bay, which is one of the better offenses in the league, but you're at home. The Falcons should be one of the better offenses in the league, but is that going to be game 2 of Cousins? So they're going to kind of be, still learning each other too. And you're also at home for that. Then you go at New Orleans, which, that's a winnable game. At Tampa Bay, winnable game. Bye. So the Eagles, their tougher games are at home, and and then they go and they get two kind of easier ones, and then they get the bye. So if they can kind of figure things out, in that week 5 bye and then come out, they play the Browns, Giants, Bengals, Jags, nothing too scary there. I have a lot of respect for the Bengals, but I think the schedule is kind of mediocre for them. I think that the schedule kind of does them a favor with the way it starts early. So
they also play no teams off of a bye. Yeah, I have them with the 8th easiest schedule in the NFL.
Yeah, like it's not hard even once you factor in the rest. So, I like teams that are built through the trenches, and even with losing Kelsey in the middle, I still think Mailata, Johnson, bookending with Dickerson. You took a flyer on Mekhi Becton. We'll see how that turns out too. But they have like you said, they have bodies. So I think on defense they'll be all right. The linebacker situation is a little worrisome, but I like Blankenship. I like Gardner Johnson on the back, and I think they have enough, in the secondary to kind of mix and match as they go. I think Fangio, yes, it's going to be a tough scheme, but I think he'll kind of figure it out, and the schedule is not too prohibitive, especially if they can kind of beat Green Bay in what might be a shootout. But offensively, what are your thoughts on Kellen Moore? Because I think that worries me a little more, actually, because ultimately, you got Green Bay, you got Detroit, you got Chicago might be very good offensively, you got San Francisco, and like all these teams are like, regardless of how good the Eagles defense is, all those teams are going to be able to score on anyone. So you're going to have to be able to put up 30, 35 points to kind of get through the NFC. So AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, they pretty much never have gotten hurt since they joined the team. So they've gotten good luck there. And the line is a little thinner. Barkley's, they paid a lot of money for Barkley, but he's a little older. And Hurts had no answers versus the blitz last year. So, like, do you think Kellen Moore just solves all these problems, or do you see some regression with the offense? Or because that actually I think could go more ways than the defense.
Yeah, no, I'm a big fan of some of the stuff that Kellen Moore does, and it's just such an upgrade over what they were doing last year, which was elementary. Which is why his issues against the blitz were exasperated. Like I think that they were just so much worse because the offense became so predictable. So I think with some of the things that Moore is going to do, and the run game is going to become much more dangerous with Barkley. Yes, Barkley's a little older, but he's still only 27. And I mean, let's face it. Who was he running behind in New York? We'll get to them in a minute. I mean, he hasn't had good offensive lines or passing attacks and receivers that you had to respect. So I think he's still got some juice left in the tank, at least definitely for this year. And I think that, with Hurts's legs and his running ability, and then, the motion and tempo that you're going to see with Moore, I think that it'll alleviate some of the problems. My question is, can Hurts, find that level that we've seen at times in the past? Didn't really see it as often last year. But I still have questions of this overall play. We've seen flashes, but just consistency with Hurts. I'm not all the way there as some people are. Like some people are betting him to win MVP, Eagles to win the Super Bowl. I'm not there. But I do think the offense will be, assuming health, will be significantly better. I'm curious on your thoughts. Third receiver, who's that going to be? And what, there Johnny Wilson at times was practicing. He was the third receiver at times. You have Paris Campbell there. I think that would be a little bit of a help, is just to get a nice valve there as a reliable third receiver. Who do you think that's going to be?
My guess is it's going to be Paris Campbell to start the season. Does he hold on to that job the whole way through? That's anyone's guess. Wilson's intriguing, but they're so different that I think, I don't know if it's necessarily like Campbell losing the job as much as Wilson might work in situationally. He would be better if you're going to commit to the run. He's like twice the size as Paris Campbell, but he's also not going to get any separation. So, but then again, is Campbell really? I don't know. I mean, it's kind of head scratching to me that given Hurts struggled against the blitz, and I know a lot of it was, motion and some, ways they line up pre-snap and things like that, but some of it was just, you could have alleviated that with just a third receiver who could separate. And I know you already got two really good ones and a really good tight end, but it's still head scratching to me that they're like they can't do better than Paris Campbell and John Ross as far as veteran guys. But so I think it's going to kind of be similar to last year when it was, you had Watkins, who was it? Olamide Zaccheaus. And then I think you had the year before you had like Pascal. I guess it's going to kind of be like a rotation like that. When they want to run or go a little heavier, they'll go Wilson, but in passing situations, they'll go Paris Campbell, but neither of those options are too exciting. But it shouldn't hurt them too much. As long as Brown and Smith continue to stay healthy.
Yeah. Well, ultimately, to wrap up the Eagles, curious to see how it's going to be a lot of change schemes. I think it's for the better ultimately, but it might take time. There might be some growing pains. Really want to see how the interior offensive line and especially the secondary all comes together. That's what I'll be watching. But I project 10.3. So anything I would play the under, but I do think they're the best team in the division. But I think the market has gone a little too far on the futures market. So nothing on the Eagles, if anything, would lean under. I
would actually, with the market kind of catching up. I mean, I still think they're winning the NFC East, so I mean, minus 120 is kind of overpriced at this point, but I don't mind some upside Eagles bets because when I look at the NFC, if the Niners are vulnerable this year, and they very well could be, that NFC North is going to kind of be a gauntlet where those, Detroit, Green Bay, and Chicago might kind of knock each other's path to the 1 seed out. Like there's a good path to the 1 or at least the 2 seed for the Eagles this year. So I don't mind them, win NFC, get to the championship game, get advance in the playoffs to the second round, whatever not. So I think Philly could go far in the playoffs this season.
Yeah, 13-1 to win the Super Bowl at a book I'm looking at right now. I just can't quite get there. But I see the case some people are making, but not for me.
All right, let's talk Dallas. Dallas, the win total is down to 9.5, which I think is kind of sharp. Oh, the juice to the over at minus 145. They're plus 150 to win the division. So the Eagles are minus 120. The Cowboys are plus 150. Now, Dallas did, when look-ahead lines first opened, I think they were favored in all but 3 games. But you look at Dallas, and I just see this team as a very fragile team. They're always kind of a regular season team that, last year they led the league in scoring during the regular season. And what do? They put up a big number, but still get thumped by the Packers because they give up 48 in the playoff game. But CeeDee Lamb, whenever, even if he signs and gets into camp and all that stuff, I never like when a guy just has these weird starts to the season when he's not practicing with his offense and whatnot. But also, if something happens to CeeDee Lamb, I mean, that offense,
they're done.
Yeah, because Brandon Cooks, he had a big game near the end of the year, kind of made his stats look a lot more respectable. But he's not that guy that he was, 4, 5, 6 years ago, when he could kind of be a de facto number 1 receiver on a good team. I don't think he's that guy anymore.
Yeah, you're relying on Jalen Tolbert.
Jalen Brooks.
It would be ugly.
Turpin, right, Flournoy. So there's a big drop-off there, obviously, when you catch, 138 balls. But so that worries me. And then the fact that we've never really seen Dallas with this many question marks at the tackle positions, I think in the, Dak Prescott era. Tyron Smith has always been there. Sometimes he's been injured, but he's kind of always been at least, the prospect of him, in theory has been there. That now you're relying on the rookie Guyton, Steele on the other side. Just a lot of uncertainty, I think, on this offensive line this year, and some fragility there because you never want.
There is. You mentioned the tackles because Udoka is out. He got hurt.
Mm-hmm. Chuma Udoka, yeah.
If either their tackles get hurt, and we're assuming, that's assuming Guyton works out, they're starting 2 rookies on the offensive line. BB's going to start at center, moving positions too. If either of the tackles get hurt, the depth is abysmal. There is no depth at tackle at all. So they really need both tackles to work and stay healthy. And even more so because, running backs usually irrelevant.
right? But when you start to look at this team and how fragile it is, where if you lose the wrong receiver, if you lose Lamb, it's a big problem. You look at the tackles, the two most important positions on the offensive line. Those are, Steele was 69th of 81 qualified tackles at PFF with a 52.3 grade last season. Guyton's a rookie. And then, and then center is probably the other most important position on the line. So, and that's a rookie as well. Now it's like, okay, well, it would be nice if the running game could take a little bit of pressure off if it needed to, because it very well might need to, but you just brought back Ezekiel Elliott, who's 29 now, and he's gone from over 4 yards a carry a couple years ago to 3.8 to 3.5 last year.
No burst.
He has no exposure. Yeah, no, he can still score. He'll help them on the goal line, but that's about it. And then, Dowdle was a career special teamer until last year. They decided he's like a number 1B running back out of nowhere. But he's okay, but he's, I don't think he's better than replacement level, like in the long term. I don't think he's really moving the needle there. So overall, this offense just, if everybody stays healthy and at least one, if not both of the rookies pan out, fine. But if anything goes wrong, and it will, because it's the Cowboys, the fall is going to be a little bit more dramatic than I think we're used to. So, can the defense make up for it? At times, yes, but this team has always relied on just outscoring people. And that's why their defense has been able to play so aggressive in the way it's played. So, I think that this is a team that I don't want any parts of their overs. Now, the market is getting, coming down on them. So we'll see where it ends up. But even at 9.5, I still don't want any part of the Cowboys, especially when you consider, I don't know, there's no real, like the NFC's jinx is not a real thing that's going to, like, you can count on to be repeatable, but that's just one more reason that kind of is like, oh man, yeah, time to fade the Cowboys.
Yeah. I think the narrative on the Cowboys, I think, has gone a little too far. What you described is all true. So, like, I would look to play this team on its tails. So you could play like it could go really bad. You just mentioned their offense has been healthy. Like, if Dak gets hurt, if Lamb gets hurt, the offense is done. The offensive line could just be a disaster, especially if there's any injuries or if the rookies don't work out. So, this team, and then when you throw in the fact that you have, these contract situations, McCarthy then is just a lame duck. And then the circus that it'll be with Jerry Jones, then it could just be a dumpster fire, right? So, and then the whole season could just go to shit. So, like, there's definitely a much lower floor on this team where everything can implode. So, like, if you want to bet on that, there's, like, in the all total market. But this is also a team that's won 12 games 3 consecutive times. I get they haven't made an NFC championship since 1995, but this is the last 3 years they've had a top 7 OD and top 10 special teams. Like, they've been extremely consistent in the regular season, and people get so hung up on just playoff losses, and it's football. It's so random. I mean, look at how the Chiefs have won some of their Super Bowls with some of their close wins, and the 49ers, they should have probably lost twice last year in the playoffs, but then probably should have won the Super Bowl. Like, there is something to Dak in big games, but he's been one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL over the past couple of years. The offensive line is definitely a question. Running back's definitely a question. You mentioned it, though, that, like, the offensive line is really important, and the offense has to continue to hum, because you said it, they're front runners. Last year, they trailed in 6 games at the half. They allowed 82 second half points in those 6 games. They led in 12 games at the half. They allowed 82 second half points. They allowed the same amount of points in the second half when leading than trailing, with twice as many games. So that just shows you how much they're front runners. Now, the defense is going to be different. It's Mike Zimmer comes in. It's going to be it's going to be a Mike Zimmer defense. He wants to play man. You'll see your A gap blitzes. I like the addition they traded for Jordan Phillips. Big part of the Zimmer format front. You need bigger guys up in the middle there. Kendricks knows the system. A lot of, like I said, A-gap blitzes. Kirstie, I was going to use Parsons. Theoretically, he has corners that can play man on the outside. There's not going to be as many all-out blitzes. Going to use a lot of sim pressures. So I like Zimmer. I think he's a sharp coach, wants to stop the run. But this is a defense that has benefited from a lot of turnovers. I just mentioned the last 3 years. Top 7-0, top 7D, top 10 special teams. I think they have a really good special teams again this year. I mean, Aubrey just made one from 66. But they like to play from ahead. And if they're not doing that and they're not getting the turnovers, plus 34 turnover margin over those past 3 years. So regression could hit there as well. Ultimately, I think the market's gone a little too far. Maybe I'm showing just a tad bit of value on Dallas to win the division, but there's definitely a lot of questions here.
Yeah, and I another thing that kind of points me away from Dallas and toward Philadelphia in terms of this division is just that, and we see this all the time. It's just that the difference in schedule between having a first place and a second place schedule, because Dallas, I look at their schedule and it's pretty tough, and I don't like the fact that they start the regular season in Cleveland. If that offensive line is shaky, that's not the team. Obviously Dallas's offense is better than Cleveland's, but not the team I want to face. And then you face Baltimore, you go to Pittsburgh in early October, you face Baltimore. Even you go to the Giants early in the year, when their pass rush might still be healthy and they might have not completely imploded yet. You host Detroit, then have a bye, then go to San Francisco. A couple weeks later, you get Philly and Houston back to back at home. You play Cincinnati a couple weeks after that. There's a lot of quality teams on this schedule, and a lot of at least especially early, that I just don't like the matchups for Dallas necessarily. So I think the win total 9.5 juice to the over is about right, but I have to get more confidence in the. Last year, I think, what were we saying? Was it last year, the year before? We were like, as long as the kicker is good, we love this team. And the kicker was good. This year, it's like, I really need to see more from the tackle situation, from the center. Like, I don't have enough information to confidently say that, because that could be 3 of the 5 and all of the 3 most important offensive line spots that, if they're below average, all bets are off for me with Dallas. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, they are a team. I think that the hate is they've been like a public darling, but it's a team that's won 12 games the last 3 years. I think the hate's gone a little far, but I want to see some things. There might be a team that, like, if I see some third things, I might invest in some some high upside during the season, but nothing as of now. The one thing I'll end the Cowboys on, we'll talk about the Bears later. Some cover 2 Everflus. My favorite Zimmer quote, he was mic'd up in a game, like, I don't know, 10 years ago. I forget who he was talking to. I think he was mic'd up, and he said, you could find a cover 2 corner anywhere. I can go down to the 7-Eleven in Bloomington and get one. When he just got caught saying it, which is really funny. But
that's hilarious.
Zim. So lots Cowboys as always, going to be interesting to watch.
All right, the Washington Commanders, 6.5 minus 125 to the over is the win total. 11-1 to win the division at BetMGM. This is a team that I think, people are kind of looking at this team and the Giants and saying, all right, if I'm taking a long shot, to win this division, which one of them is it? We talked about this before. I think the one thing Washington has going for it is just the unknown with Jaden Daniels, and the fact that we know how transformative a franchise quarterback can be. And so I think Washington, the win total is about right at 6.5. I don't love the over. I don't know if I see 7 wins on the schedule. But I think, some upside bets for them. Jaden Daniels to win offensive rookie of the year,
MVP.
Sorry, I meant offensive rookie, not MVP. Not MVP. Yeah. Offensive rookie of the year, that you could get that around 5-1. And like, if you're taking a long shot on the division, I still go Washington over the Giants. I just don't like the way the Giants have been building their team. But in terms of Washington, what are you seeing? It's a lot of new with Washington. I mean, Del Rio's gone, Rivera, that whole regime. The cornerbacks are we still got some of the young guys, but it's just the defensive line is not the same as it used to be. You got Bobby Wagner and Luvu at linebacker, so you actually have good linebackers for once. The opinions on the offensive line vary. You got Eckler in the backfield. You got Zach Ertz there, Kingsbury. I mean, just so much going on. What are you kind of prognosticating here for the Commanders?
Yeah, let's start on the defense. The offense is much more interesting, so we'll hit that last. Like Luvu, like the linebackers. You're bringing in, Dan Quinn's new head coach brings with him Witt as the DC. You can see a lot more aggression, cover one, covers with some cover three. But Quinn has really evolved as a defensive guy. The problem is here. I mean, Payne and Allen are good players. You need them to get, all world pressure on every passing down. This team couldn't stop a nosebleed last year in the back end, and they didn't really address it. I like Sanders still. I think he's going to be a really good player, the nickel, and I think that Quinn and Witt can use him really well in his aggression. He's a guy I think is ready now, and he's not afraid. But their corners, St. Juice, I liked him in the slot, and thought he had some potential there. He's your number one. Is he your one? Michael Davis is washed. Your safeties, Quan Martin, Jeremy Chin, they don't move the needle. So this secondary is very problematic, and I think is going to be their downfall. And it's not like they have unbelievable edge rushers. They just need Allen and Payne, and they need Quinn and Witt to scheme up some unreal pressures, because I don't see them getting many stops on the back end. That's definitely going to be a problem. On the offensive side, where do we start? I have a lot of issues here. And by the way, I won't even get to the special teams. Do they have a kicker? They have a kicker competition going on. And it's not been pretty. So let's start with wide receiver. I always like getting your input there. McLaurin is a stud, but Cliff's probably going to use him incorrectly. I would assume. It's Cliff comes from air raid principles. He runs a more balanced offense than that. We're going to be really fast. They're going to be up tempo.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting.
That super fast. But after McLaurin, is Dotson just a bust? I'm hearing Diami Brown's going to win the number 2 wide receiver spot. Dotson might get traded. And then is it Zacchaeus going to be on the outside with McLaurin and Diami Brown? Or Dotson is he played almost the whole game in the last preseason game. They had Diami Brown out there before him. What's going on there? Is Dotson just a bust?
So, I think you'd have to say he had a good year 1 and a bad year 2. So I wouldn't say he's full on bust, but he's inching toward that territory. Yeah. The one thing I will say is I actually think, who was the coordinator last year? Bieniemy, right?
Yeah.
I want to say that Bieniemy used the entire offense wrong last year. So
I'm not going to just pass every fucking down.
Yeah. And it was too predictable. It was, because Dotson regressed, McLaurin even regressed last year. So it wasn't a great scheme. But Dotson, what it sounds like to me is maybe they are showcasing him for a trade, but they're definitely trying him in a slot. And he's 5'11", 182. So I understand why they would, try to do that. He can obviously move around, but Diami Brown on the outside gives them, I guess they want more of a downfield, a little bit more size downfield. Now Diami Brown, he's flashed at times, but he's another guy hasn't put it together. 3rd round pick in 2021. So yeah, that could be shaky. Zach Ertz, Kingsbury's favorite tight end. He should be at least He
Oh,
should
we
be
get
at
in the
least
red zone because that's who
Yeah.
they need. Who are the red zone targets in this offense?
it's going to be Ertz, and that's another reason why they're probably using Brown. I'm not buying this Zacchaeus thing. I mean, maybe he's like Cliff does like to go spread and whatnot, but I don't think Zacchaeus is going to be a consistent part.
Yeah, they
but,
they got Luke McCaffrey, but I'm hearing he's not really ready yet.
Yeah, he doesn't seem ready. So this could go a lot of ways. Ultimately, though, at the end of the day, you got a stud receiver. Your running backs are solid. I mean, I don't think the line is going to be terrible. I think it's going to be like average.
I think it's going to be bad.
I think it's going to be bad.
Yeah,
Coleman. Coleman on the.
Well, look, Coleman's going to be starting at left tackle. He's not. He's hurt right now. But he's going to be starting at left tackle. 3rd round or later tackles rookie year. They hit about 5% of the time when they're not a disaster. That's not promising. Last year, their offense, I mean, it was so bad because, as you mentioned, the enemy would just pass. But Hal was responsible for a lot of the sacks. Like, they gave up 65 sacks. Hal was probably responsible for like 12, 13 of them. And then obviously they were playing from behind a ton, so they threw a ton. So, like, they're a little inflated of a number. But if you look, everyone was blaming the tackles last year. Tackles give up a 6% pressure rate. That's like close to league average. Guards league average like 4.5%. It was 6%. Center, around 3.5%, 4% league average. It was 6%. So the pressure was coming from all over. Charles was a disaster at guard. So at least he's not there. So you brought in Biotish at center, Allegretti. It's better. It's not great. And the
quarterback can move more. So that's. But
I'll get to that. But Wiley is bad. Cornelius Lucas is bad. And you might have him and Wiley starting with Coleman out. I don't see it with this offensive line. And so I don't see it with the offensive line. The wide receivers are a question mark. Who can make up for that? It's, and obviously you do have a more mobile quarterback, as you said, but I'm not a Jaden Daniels guy. So, and I will always say this, no one knows exactly how this guy's going to be a bust. This guy's not when it comes to quarterback. It comes down to processing milliseconds and can they have the pocket presence, read the defenses. But his pressure to sack rate's alarming in college. Very, very alarming. You look at all the guys he's around that have been drafted that were that low. By the way, all Sam Howell. He's in Sam Howell territory. Sam Howell, Willis, Stidham, Ritter, Hackenberg. The guys with that, he takes way too many sacks. I don't like, and look, he was playing behind a great offensive line with 2 stud receivers who got drafted in the 1st round. I don't know if he has, number one, if he can avoid enough sacks, the pocket presence, in order to succeed as an NFL quarterback. He's looked okay in the regular season, but his average time to throw has been 1.9 seconds. And his ADOT's been about 4 yards.
That's Cliff. That's what Cliff's gonna do. Look at Kyler Murray every year. He's like a YPA of like 6 because he just fucking throws the ball at the first sign of pressure.
Yeah,
it's not always efficient, but
in order for him to win, it's like, take the next step. Can he? One other teams take that away, and he's gonna have to throw on 3rd downs, and this offensive line's a disaster. He bails too quickly. I don't like some of his numbers under pressure. So who I think Jaden Daniels is?
Who?
Justin Fields.
I was thinking that. I still think he's going to be a better passer than Justin Fields, because even the fact that, like, I know it's preseason, but even the fact that he was able to get the ball out, what I mean? Like, Justin Fields, I don't think I've ever seen Justin Fields get the ball out like that preseason or not.
Like, people say he's Lamar, but Lamar, he did not have those pressure to sack rates. His ADOT, where he was throwing the ball, his pressure numbers all in college were much more promising. So yeah, I think he's going to be Fields. Because I think that it is an easy schedule. You have a late bye, which might hurt with all of these changes, but I project around, what do I project? 6.6. So, but I don't like Cliff. I'm not buying that Daniels hype. I don't like this offensive line. The wide receivers the cornerbacks, the secondary could be a disaster. And by the way, you're trying to deal with all this offensive line mess. They brought in to help solve that a guy who has a great track record of dealing with offensive line messes. Bobby Johnson, who's been the offensive line coach for the Giants the past couple of years.
Oh god. And don't the Commanders always lose to the Giants twice a year anyway? Oh yeah, no, they beat them twice last year too. Yeah, the Giants just always. So the Commanders, you got to pencil in 2 losses against the Giants, yeah, which is why I don't like their win total. I guess it's like you pencil in 2 losses to the worst team in the league, and then it's like, where are you? The schedule is not so easy anymore suddenly.
Yeah, it's a pass for me, but I'm not buying this team. Lots of issues. I think that the Eagles have a lower floor than some people think. I think the Cowboys have an extremely low floor if everything goes bad. So because there's a lot of change, like the Cowboys, new defensive coordinator, this offensive line, all the stuff that could go on there, and talked about with the Eagles, new coordinators, new interior offensive line, a brand new secondary, complex D. So and then also you throw in the chance of injuries. So I was like, all right, we talked about this earlier, we already mentioned. Who do I want to buy as a long shot? Washington or New York? After spending all summer digging into teams, couldn't get to Washington. I wanted to for the upside of Daniels, couldn't get there. And we'll talk about the Giants next. And ultimately, I couldn't get there either.
Yeah, I'm glad you finally, because I'm saying between the two, I would choose Washington, but neither of these teams is that appealing at the end of the day. And the Giants, I just don't like the decisions that they've been making. It's like the more you kind of step back and look at it, yes, they should have a good pass rush, but first of all, I feel like that there's this notion that Kayvon Thibodeau is already elite. He showed some promise, but he's been solid, but he's far from elite. So it's not like you don't have 3 elite guys. You have three guys with elite potential. And you kind of mortgaged the secondary to do that. I mean, who are your Deonte Banks still hasn't looked good. Is he going to actually improve and make that jump that you expect out of second-year corners?
Flott, you're gonna need Flott on the outside.
Flott, you got Phillips. Simmons is playing corner now. Belton and Pinnock are your safeties. I mean, that's only gonna last so much. And I don't feel like the Giants are good at self-evaluation either. They draft a 5th rounder and put him on the depth chart ahead of Gray at running back, the 5th rounder from last year, and Gray looks like the best running back in camp. They say they're gonna not pay Barkley, and then they pay Devin Singletary top 15 running back money. Darius Slayton, they keep trying to knock him out of the depth chart. He's always their most productive receiver. So, and then Daniel Jones, they bet big on him, and I mean that was clearly a mistake. So Neal, another mistake. So I don't have any confidence in any of the depth signings on this team, even though they might look okay on paper. I know they got Runyon and Van Roten and on the line and Illuminor and whatnot, but I just think this team is a disaster waiting to happen. Yeah, exactly. I just think this team's a disaster waiting to happen because they're so fragile, and their best players outside of Neighbors and the Lawrence Burns, outside of those guys, your best players are like Okereke, who great, but that's a linebacker. That's not really that important. And then you have Thomas at left tackle. That's great, except the rest of your line's probably still going to stink and your quarterback stinks. So it's great. You have a great left tackle, but okay. I just don't see enough here for this Giant team. And then on top of that, I don't like the fact that you have this shaky quarterback, and you're going to probably have no run game because who are you run blocking with? I mean, you got Wan'Dale Robinson. Is he going to play a lot of snaps? How many snaps is Hyatt going to play? If those guys are both, top 3 wide receivers, you got tiny guys run blocking. Theo Johnson, not really a run blocker if he starts at tight. You just have too many one-dimensional players on offense. The line isn't great. The defense is pretty much, pass rush and pray. And eventually, if anyone gets hurt or if they get tired even, because they're going to rely on them a lot, I just don't think the back end is going to hold up at all. So, yeah, I'm down on this team. But Daniel Jones, I mean, he just seems to be regressing. Even with Neighbors, I don't see it for him. But what do you think?
Yeah, we'll start on the defense. Shane Bowen comes in defensive coordinator. Going to look a lot different than Wink Martindale. he's although he is aggressive, Jim Schwartz influence, but he's more zone, not much blitzing, but an aggressive zone. But you know what this defense is going to look like? The Titans last year.
No.
They had a good front, no secondary, and they had a terrible pass D. I don't know why it would look any different. Defensive, the linebackers are good. The defensive line is good, although McFadden got hurt. I haven't seen an update on him, but in preseason worth noting. But that's what I think this defense is the Titans defense from last year. Same coordinator, same profile of day. They had no corners, no secondary, good front. So unless they're getting pressure, they're not getting many stops. And they're going to give up a ton of explosive plays. Offensively, yeah, I mean, it's a mess. I mean, the offensive line, they did bring in a better offensive line coach from the Raiders, who's done a really good job there the last 2 years. But they have like the guys they brought in. Yeah, I guess they're a little better, but they also have no continuity. There's no fall camp continuity. They're going to go into the year taking 0 snaps together, and they haven't since. And they're moving guys around, and there's been a couple guys banged up, and yeah, the offensive line's not going to be good again. Deja vu, Groundhog Day, with the Giants, which has been a problem. And then the Jones thing, like Neighbors helps, but Jones is just not that guy. By the way, I said that they're going to be the Titans D, but the Giants are the Commanders in a way. Bad offensive line. You have a stud receiver. Questions elsewhere. Questions, are they going to be able to run the ball? Mobile quarterback. And then on your defense, you have some guys up front, no secondary. Kind of a lot of parallels. The Commanders even took their offensive line coach. So, I mean, I guess there's more upside with Daniels because of the uncertainty, and we know who Daniel Jones is. Last 10 quarterbacks drafted to throw 1,000 passes with 5.5 adjusted net yards per attempt or less. Here's a list. Mitch Bortles, Blake Bortles, for those new to the program, that's Mitch Trubisky, Blake Bortles, Mac Jones, Trevor Siemian, Sam Darnold, Brock Osweiler, Mike Glennon, Christian Ponder, Blaine Gabbert, and Daniel Jones. It's 1,000+ snaps. That's all you need to know right there. Look at him against the Texans. I mean, it was a preseason game. That was embarrassing. So yeah, he's just not the guy. Not going to become the guy. It's really a shame because like they were kind of starting to turn it around. They were left in this new regime, which I agree. I don't like the way they're building, but they were left in just a brutal position just from a roster perspective. And then they throw $160 million at Daniel Jones, and it all came down to that lucky run in 2022. Aaron Rodgers had 2 incomplete passes on 3rd and 1 and 4th and 1, I think in London. Mm-hmm. And the Giants won that game. And then the whole media was like Daniel Jones, because I think Barkley got hurt and he led like a game tying and game winning drive on a bunch of like short passes. And then everyone was like Daniel Jones. And then the narrative changed and they won a couple other lucky games that year. And that led to him ultimately getting the contract. Good for his agent. His agent should probably get half that. And yeah, then they gave way too much money. But yeah, I don't see it with the Giants this year. Defense last year, extremely lucky from a turnover department, number 1 in EPA gained. Got a good front, but this is going to look like a Titans bad pass D last year with Bowen. And the offensive line is still going to be a mess. Yeah, Neighbors could have a big year. They'll be playing from behind. They're going to be maybe Neighbors for like offensive rookie of the year. But no interest in the Giants. For what it's worth, schedule-wise, I have them 20th. So it's pretty easy schedule. Only 7 true road games, and you get Carolina and Germany. But I project right around 6, so nothing.
Yeah, I like the under on the Giants. I look at this schedule and like some of the teams that you expect them to beat. Like, are they going to continue to beat Washington twice? I mean, like Rivera's gone. It's a new regime. I don't love Dan Quinn, but he did seem to get better, when he went to Dallas, and he was going to be very familiar with them from his time in Dallas. So that might not be those 2 wins. I'm higher on Carolina than the market, so
Carolina's winning that game.
Yeah, right. I'm not penciling them in for that. They're losing at Pittsburgh. Probably probably losing at home to the Colts too. They'll beat the Saints. Like that seems like the one they'll get. But yeah, I don't like. I think it's going to be too tight, and I think there's a lot of ways. I mean, they'll play Minnesota in week 1, and everyone's probably going to be on the Giants. And I mean, I'd take Mullins with that with the Vikings over this week 1 Giant team with Daniel
Flores
Jones
is going to terrorize
right.
Jones.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't see it, and I think I think Daboll's gotten like the anchoring bias. Like he started off really well and everything, but I think Daboll has the potential to unravel as well. So I actually have a first coach fired bet out there on him as well. I think I got him like 10-1. He's up there. He's one of the top ones, along with our favorite Dennis Allen. But I could see this really unraveling. Not a fan of, and Mara is still factoring in way too much into their decisions, which we saw on Hard Knocks. So I think this organization's going downhill. I think they already peaked in this Daboll era in that first year. All right, Atlanta, 9.5 -140 to the over. This clearly, I think the best team in this division, but it is a weak division. When your leader is with 9.5 wins, it's weak. But I like the trade for Judon. I'm still curious about like what. Well, I guess 2 questions, because the strength of this team this year, as it should have been in some years past, should be the offense. But we have no idea really what's going on with Kirk Cousins. We're not going to get a chance to see him with this offense. But I mean, Penix actually looked okay. So, where are you with this Falcon offense? Because that's what's going to make this team, kind of separate this team and kind of carry it to a division title.
Yeah, I mean, Cousins, they say he's full strength. He's not going to play in the preseason. He'll be ready to go. But yeah, he's I think he turns 37 today or 36. I think it was his birthday. I don't know. I randomly saw that today somewhere. And so he's getting up there and he's coming off a serious injury. And how healthy
36.
will he be? Is he going to be the same? That's definitely a question and a viable concern. So, at least I didn't like the draft pick of Penix. Like if you wanted to go that route, then you would have had a lot of money to do something else, and you should have went with Penix.
Yeah, quarterback on rookie deal is so advantageous, and he looked pretty good too. It's like not like you probably didn't even necessarily miss with the eval, but yeah, head scratcher.
Yeah, but I think the offense will look a lot more modern. Bringing Zach Robinson from the Rams, you see just a ton of 11 personnel.
Yeah, I was about to say it's going to look totally different. I mean, they're talking about Ray McCloud.
98%. 11 personnel so far, which is just by the Rams at 99%. But the problem is Rondell Moore hurt.
Yeah,
Ray McCloud's going to be your three.
I think what they ultimately should do is try to find it would be nice if I think Blair is kind of popping in preseason and they drafted Washington. It would be nice if one of those guys could just give you enough on the outside, just kind of running wind sprints, that you could just put Mooney, because Mooney could play in the slot, so they do have some options. Because I don't like necessarily trotting Ray McCloud out there 80-90%, because you saw like the Rams did that with Tutu Atwell, and eventually they just went to Demarcus Robinson, because it's like these small guys, anytime you want to run the ball, it's a disadvantage. So I don't love that. I don't love that at all.
So I think as long as if Cousins is healthy, this offense has a ton of potential. It'll look a lot better. Bijan is back. Drake London.
Line is very good.
Offensive line is very good. So the offense has a ton of potential. And last year, they finished 7-10, but they had a number of games where just
don't remind me.
Ritter would just
I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it.
So I mean, the bar to clear is very low, regardless. And the play calling wasn't ideal. The defense is the question.
Judon helps.
Yeah, and Judon and Justin Simmons, who I love. And you pair him and Jesse Bates on the back end of the defense. That's going to really help. You have AJ Terrell at corner. So up front, though, you lost Calais, Bud Dupree. Didn't really add anyone else until you got Judon, which is why I think it was so huge, because who was going to get after the passer? So if Judon can hit, you got Grady Jarrett back, but the linebackers, the rest of the defensive front, pretty underwhelming. But I think that the secondary has a chance to be good. The other corner spots are definitely questions. but at least you have one lockdown corner, two good smart safeties who can clean up a lot, and you did add Judon. So I think that definitely raised the floor of this team and the ceiling. So that was the two pieces that I think need like another really good just veteran piece on the team, and then they needed a pass rusher. So good job there addressing those needs. And they have the easiest schedule in the NFL by a long mile for my numbers. It's a joke schedule. The other thing I like about this schedule is you have the question. So you have this, new coordinator, new staff. Raheem Morris comes in. He is he's a Carroll San Fran cover 3 tree, but he's really adapted, and he's one of the sharper defensive coordinators now in the NFL. He ran a lot more quarters, and he will adapt his defenses. So those are the coordinators that I like. And he brought in Jimmy Lake, who's had a lot of success like stopping spread offenses in the past. So curious to see his wrinkles when he was at Washington stopping Mike Leach. That's what he used to be known for, the air raids. But I like Morris as a defensive mind. But there's going to be a lot of changes, right? You're going to a new scheme defense. You have a new scheme on offense. You have a new quarterback. You have, a lot of new pieces on D. So, and then you have Cousins, who is he going to be healthy? There's going to be maybe some ramping up period. The reason I like that is because, you're at Philly. You start with Pittsburgh. You're at Philly, then Kansas City. Those are tough games. You're probably not beating Kansas City. You're probably not winning at Philly. So get those games early when, you're implementing all these changes. You're getting Cousins who might take some time, right? So, and then after that, look at the schedule. It is a joke. Who's their hardest game is, they get Dallas at home. We just talked about Dallas. That's their hardest game.
Yeah. Saints, Bucks, Panthers, Seahawks, Bucks, Cowboys, Saints, Broncos, Chargers, who I think are overrated, Vikings, Raiders, Giants, Commanders, Panthers. That is, you could start 0-3 and go 14-3. So yeah, just look for this team. Look to bet this team over. If they could start, they very well could start 0-3, depending on what happens with Pittsburgh. But even if they're 1-2 and it's not, they might get blown out even by the Eagles and Chiefs. Who knows? People are like, oh man, I guess this failed experiment or whatever. This team could just run off 9, 10, 11 straight wins, or but at least a handful. They could at least run off 5 and then be facing the Cowboys, and they'll be like 5-3 or 6-2. So I wouldn't be afraid. I would be looking to kind of bet this team if the market comes down on them if they start slow.
Yeah, I also might look for a Super Bowl future if they start slow, or like an NFC future. But I project 9.9, kind of close to the market. So nothing for me, but it's a good point. They start slow. I do think this team has some upside.
Yeah. And they might be like one of those teams where if they start slow, they, right now, look at lines, they're favored around a field goal week 4 against the Saints, week 5 against the Bucks, week 6 against the Panthers, and week 7 against the Seahawks. And then they're like a pick 'em against the Bucks. So that might be at least early in that slate, you might be able to kind of get some value with a short favorite, with them, because, if they're like -3 against this or -2.5 or something against the Saints, because they started 0-3, I'll take that all day.
Yep.
All right. Saints, speaking of the Saints, offensive line, that stands out as an issue. The win total 7.5. The over is -120 at BetMGM. They're 4-1 to win the division. PFF has them ranked number 32 in offensive line. And I don't know if I can argue with it. Outside of McCoy, there's just so many questions. McCoy at center, there's just so many questions. Penning hasn't been good. Who is it? Ramczyk is out for the year. What's going to happen?
They lost Pete. They lost Hurst, who was their swing guy. Ramczyk's out for the year with his knee. You're moving Pennick, who's a bust. Penning, you're moving him from left tackle to right tackle. You're starting Fuaga at left tackle. He was as a rookie. He was a right tackle. Lucas Patrick is a dumpster fire at left guard. They were going to maybe start Saldiveri, the second-year player, hasn't played, old Dominion kid, but he's hurt. This offensive line is a mess, and that's problematic because Carr can't handle pressure. So
and he generally is not great in a new scheme, first year of a new scheme, and this is another new scheme because they let go of longtime Peyton OC Carmichael, and now there's Kubiak is here, and that might ultimately be a good thing, but still another new scheme with a bad offensive line.
yeah, I mean the scheme should be better on paper, but yeah, you're right. I mean there's gonna be more motion. Which was non-existent last year. Just Shanahan, Kubiak loves a lot of Shanahan influence, more play action. But yeah, it's all going to fall apart. There's no offensive line, and Carr just just does not fare well with pressure. Last year he had a sprained AC. I know he had a sprained AC joint in the beginning of the year. The end of the year, he had a shoulder injury, concussion, which was part of their struggles. They were, they still won 9 games. They were 3-6 in 1-score games, but that could happen again. I think Carr joked at one point on Twitter. He deleted it, but some fan said sent him a picture of a zombie at a parade, and he was like, "This is you this season behind your offensive line." And he was like, "You're not wrong" or something. So it's hard to see that. I mean, Carr is just like he is the definition of your average quarterback. So on paper, you had an average quarterback. You have a potential to have a top 10 D, and really good secondary. Dennis Allen knows how to coach defenses. And, you added Willie Gay. You already had a good secondary. Defensive line is getting up there in age. But, you could have a top 10 D with an average quarterback in this division. A lot of potential to win it and get to the playoffs. But the offensive line, I think, is just going to hold them back. So you have Shaheed Alave with an improvement. It's the offensive line. I can't get there. And Saints fans, and the schedule is super easy. Obviously, they're with the division they're in. But Saints fans, aren't you tired of this? Just
purgatory.
It's just so far. It used to be with Breeze and Peyton and winning and in the mix, and you're just with their salary cap issues. Don't you just want to blow it up? I know it'll suck for a couple years, but yeah, purgatory is the perfect word. But ultimately, I think the offensive line is going to hold them back. Defense should keep them in games, but I have them with the third easiest schedule. I project them, 7.8 wins. So nothing for me.
Yeah, I'd actually lean under. I really don't it's easy on paper, but then it's the games that are the easiest are the division games, and you could never be, they're kind of favored in a lot of these games. So that could easily go the other way, especially we saw the Bucs have good luck against the Saints. Now Canales is with the Panthers. So, if the Panthers end up winning one or both of those games, I mean, that changes a lot because,
yeah, I mean, I have a ton of coin flips. I only favored in 7 games. I'm looking at my spreads.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's not as easy as it seems.
1.9 minus 1.6, 1.7, 2.7 minus 0.9. It's minus 2.8, 0.8. So yeah, I don't hate the under though. And Dennis Allen, by the way, 0-5 in win totals.
Yeah. Dennis Allen's a fade. If it goes really bad, maybe they do blow it up. I could see him. He's the favorite for first coach fired. So no real value there. But I just feel like kind of the same things we talked about coming in last year. It's still true. It's still a good defense, but a defense that kind of getting a little long in the tooth at some spots, a little bit fragile. And the quarterback's learning a new scheme. And, now Kamara's getting up there in age. Johnson's already hurt. Shaheed's already hurt. Carr and Olave do not like each other. If everything I've seen just watching him play with each other is correct. So, I mean, there's a low floor, but yeah, they, like you said, they still won 9 games. So probably a team I'd look to fade in more creative ways. Maybe, I think I had them to miss the playoffs last year. Maybe that's something you look at, but generally not bullish on the New Orleans Saints, because I think the Atlanta Falcons are clearly the best team in the division. And I think the most undervalued team is the Panthers, which we'll get to. But all right, next up, we got the Tampa Bay Bucks. 7.5 minus 140 is the win total. Again, this team just kind of worries me because Canales, who had a very good effect on Geno a couple years ago, very good effect on Baker Mayfield last year. He's now gone. So I don't know if Baker Mayfield at this stage in his career, especially with, none of the offense really got hurt. Can Baker Mayfield play as well as he did last year? Is Mike Evans, can we pencil him in for yet another 1,000-yard season? Is Godwin going to kind of work out playing more on the more slot? No, isn't it? Not they trying to move him outside this year? No, yeah. They're trying to move him to slot. Sorry, yeah, into slot. There's going to be some key differences. Could be for the better, but I don't know. What do you think about this offense without Canales? Like, how do you think there's any tangible effect there, or just kind of more of the same?
Yeah, I think Baker Mayfield was pretty lucky last year. The Bucs as a whole were very lucky in a lot of metrics. And Liam Cohen's in new OC. Godwin back to slot. McMillan might be wide receiver too, the rookie out of Washington.
Well, the outside. Yeah, him and Palmer are kind of neck and neck right now.
Yep. That's a good race to watch. But I think Mayfield, and we know who he is. I think the Bucs are kind of like the Saints. Like they just need to blow it up, and then they gave all this money to Baker. Like there's an aging roster that needs to be blown up, and they caught a flash in the pan last year in a shitty division, beat the Eagles, and then Baker gets $100 million. The offensive line is an issue, but at both guard spots, now you're gonna have a rookie. You're gonna have a rookie starting at center. I like Graham Barton, but is he ready right away? I don't love the defense. They're less talented than last year. Corner is definitely a question. Pass rush, I know they're going to try to generate it with a lot of blitzes under Bowles, but there's a couple rookies who have flashed, like Bucky Irving. Tyke Smith could end up getting the nickel spot. He fits what Bowles wants to do, really aggressive, like off the edge. And I really don't like.
What happens? Would you move Izzy in outside, or what do you do then? Like, who you benching?
Could.
But Colin was the guy that was at least last. Well, yeah, he's been the worst.
I don't like McCollum at all.
Yeah, so I mean, that's why I asked.
Yeah, I don't know. That's all going to work out. I don't think he's going to. I just think that that's a possibility in later on this season. I don't know how they would actually shuffle everyone. It's a good question. But I'm just not in love with this defense. Couple studs that you have. Vea and David. Dean is good at one corner spot that you can rely on, but as a whole, meh. And offensive line is a question. Play calling, I'm a little worried about Liam Cohen, not as high on him as others. And the interior offensive line is really problematic because Baker does not deal with pressure well. I think that they got really lucky last year. Trying to get an 8, under 8, but this is one of my favorite unders in the NFC. Project 7-3, but it's a team I want to fade, and I show value in the current number. So I like the under here in Tampa. The one thing I don't like is, if you look at their schedule, I mean, they're in the NFC South, it's going to be easy. That is the 6th easiest, but they start with Washington week 1, rookie quarterback. Denver week 3, probably rookie quarterback. So they're catching the rookie quarterbacks early, which is beneficial. But they also play some really good teams on their schedule too. I don't think they're going to beat San Fran, Baltimore, Kansas City, which I just don't think are with Philadelphia. I think they take a step back here. I like the under.
Yeah, it's plus 115 at BetMGM, so that kind of can sway you more toward it because this team, I do have them projected under as well, but there's so many kind of coin flip games that it's not a confident under, but the fact that it's plus 115 helps a little bit.
I'm actually looking for a juiced 8.5 or a juiced 8, and I'm willing to pay for that. I don't think in such a bad division, I think paying for that extra half win could be worth it. But the Panthers are improved. We'll talk about them next. So I don't think that those are just the gimmies that they were last year. Yeah. And by the way, when they played Carolina last year, I think I had money on Carolina in the worst game of all time, which just summed up the Panthers season so much. Tampa covered -6. They were 6-point favorites, and they only scored 9 points. and they won 9-0.
9-zip. Yep.
That was payback from the gambling gods from when I covered Washington in the monsoon against San Fran, catching
I remember
10
that.
and a half, and they lost.
And was that like
10-0.
yeah, that was a terrible game too.
But yeah, like I think the Panthers at the end of that game missed a field goal, and then were driving in for a touchdown and fumbled. They also had a fumble, like they were going in and they got batted out into the back of the end zone for a touchback, I think, in that game too. Comedy of errors for the Panthers, who should be better this year. Sweeping the Bucs. Come back to this. Clip this. They're sweeping the Bucs this year. Mark it down.
I would love that because I have Panthers over on their win total. I still like it at 5.5. I think I got it at 4.5. I want to say.
We said on our preseason preview
that was like our favorite
biggest edge I showed. I had them over 6 wins.
Yeah, exactly. It's good. I just don't think it's going to be. It's still going to be a bad team. I just don't think it's going to be league worst team. And you do have some upside because look at Canales when he was 2022. He's coaching Geno. I think that the Seattle Seahawks had a win total heading into that year 5.5. Well, Geno plays well, and they end up winning 9 games. Then last year, the Bucs 6.5 win total. Well, Baker Mayfield ends up playing well. They win 9 games. So this division's weak enough that the Panthers could actually, like you said, have success in the division. And then you got the last place schedule, so it's not super hard. I mean, the games you're gonna lose. You're gonna have like games that you're just not gonna win, like Chiefs, Eagles. Probably Cowboys and Bengals. Oh, Chiefs, Eagles, Bengals, and probably Cowboys. Besides that, there's a lot of teams that they could.
But the Cowboys could just be a disaster.
True.
Like at that point in time.
And then Falcons are a divisional game, so you can't count them out. Even though I make them like 6-point dogs in that one. They play the Raiders, they play the Saints, they play the Commanders, they play the Broncos, play the Cardinals, they play the Giants. So enough games to get them to 6. If not 7, because I just think this is going to be another one of these, like all these NFC South teams aside from the Falcons. They're kind of the same. Like the Panthers probably are the worst, but they made some good additions. I think getting better interior lineman Hunt that was big because Bryce Young is short, so interior pressure is going to really bother him. But also, you just didn't have guys that could separate last year. Now you got Deontay Johnson. Leggett, I think, started practicing. Eventually, he's probably going to take over for Mingo. Thielen should be okay when he doesn't have to be like 100 catch wide receiver, which Johnson should alleviate. So I think the line will be better. I think Young will just be better because he's going to be better coached. Reich was just terrible, and the defense will be okay. You got some pieces. You got Horn. You did get Clowney. Maybe it's like a cheap, at least for 1 year, a replacement for Burns. You got Brown, you got Woods and Fuller, I think, are good safety. So there's enough here to win 6 games. I don't know how much more. I actually took a long shot on them to win the division, but the Falcons made some good moves. This is before they had Judon and I think Simmons as well. So the Falcons have kind of fortified their defense a little bit. So not as in love with that as I was, but what are you doing with the Panthers? Are you still over on their wins?
Yeah, obviously don't show as much value. I'm right now, but I still like it a little bit, and it'll be a fun bet to sweat if you still want to get in. I mentioned on that podcast, I'm gonna sprinkle. It's come way down. I'm glad you did. I hope some others listened. But yeah, I think this team will be much better. They upgraded their offensive guard position, which was really important. So the offensive line should be better. That was a disaster last year. I think, Canales and Brad, they're going to implement a new scheme, which I think is going to be more quarterback friendly. And you mentioned Canales with his quarterback turnaround history, but there's going to be more motion. San Fran Rams, a lot of parallels there with your, horizontal stretch offense, misdirection. They're going to use a lot more jet motion, outside zone, and they're going to get Young on the move, get him outside the pocket, boot him out. That's important because he's still small. So I think it's going to be a much friendlier offense for Young. I still think his ceiling is kind of capped by his size, but he'll be better this year just by sheer experience and just his pedigree alone. He still was an unbelievable quarterback in college, so he'll be better. yeah, I like the additions of Johnson. I like Leggett. Just got to kind of work on his routes a bit. But the D lost some talent, but I trust Evero. I think he's one of the more underrated defensive coordinators in the league. He's a Fangio disciple, gap and a half, match, quarter, zone coverage, but a lot more basic, way more cover three. I trust him to game plan enough to get enough wins in this division. So they were extremely unlucky last year, even though they never led in the fourth quarter, which is pretty crazy. But they were unlucky across the board. But I think this will be an improved team, and I agree. I think they get at least to 6 wins. I do like the Dane Jackson fit. I think he's really does fit this defensive scheme, which I random note, but I think he'll help. So yeah, give me the Panthers, and I'll be rooting for your flyer on the division.
Yeah, Panthers I think will be a lot better this year. But just to recap, Stuck, you like the Panthers over, and you like
Panthers
the Bucks
over, Bucks under.
Yeah, those are your two. I like the Giants under and the Panthers over, and I do think Philadelphia wins the NFC East, and I do like Philadelphia for some higher upside plays as well, because I think they have a better path than they had last year. All right, that's going to wrap it up for our Action Network NFC East, NFC South betting preview. This is part 1. We'll have part 2 with the NFC North and the NFC West. Be sure to check out Stuckey and I on the AFC as well. We have a two-parter for that. So be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. You can find Stuckey on X at Stuckey2. I'm at Chris Raybon. We're at those same handles on the free award-winning Action Network app, where you can follow our bets and track your own. Until next time, let's get this money.